Jane Dobry, good afternoon, Ninamani. I say Ninamani because I am based in Adelaide in Australia. Many of you may not realise that Australia is actually made up of 200 different Aboriginal language groups, and part of making a museum which is brand new is ensuring that we bring a new mindset to that. And so using both Aboriginal and Western ways of thinking about science and technology is really important to us. So yes, I did fly here today. I promise you I've come for many things and I'm here for a couple of weeks, and I've squeezed all of my overseas travel into this brief period because it is important that we all make those changes, and I'm very grateful to the people who make small changes and the people who make big changes. So what is MOD? MOD is Australia's leading future-focused museum provoking new ideas at the intersection of science, art and innovation. We're a year old. We've had 100,000 people through our doors since we opened, and we're particularly targeted at 15 to 25-year-olds. So how do we do that? We do that by looking at the research of the University of South Australia, in which we are situated, but also across South Australia, to inspire young adults about science and technology. So this is an exhibit we had in our first exhibition called Feeling Human. You can see Kelly sitting in that chair. She is being electrocuted so that she feels pain, because we were looking at the research of how brain affects the pain, and that red light should make her feel more pain than the blue light that Joey is sitting in, which makes him feel less pain. So we don't have a collection, but we build immersive experiences that help people understand the research. I can assure you that no humans were harmed in the making of this exhibit. The reason we're focused on 15 to 25-year-olds is we want them to be inspired about what science and technology can hold for their futures, and so they continue to study those, whether that's looking for a career in science and technology or to build those capabilities for careers in a range of different careers and industries. We want it to be, I think, as the previous panel said, trying to get 15 to 25-year-olds into a museum is difficult. So we want it to be a place where they feel like they can belong, and we want it to be a place where they feel like they can navigate their future. This is us at one of the climate school strikes that happened in late last year in Adelaide, one of the global movements that many people have referred to. Because if you're going to help people navigate the future, you can't do that without a conversation around climate. And so we've been thinking about how do you have a conversation around climate in the future when you live in a country that really just has re-elected a Prime Minister who hugged a block of coal in Parliament a couple of years ago. It's a really tricky place to be when we live in such a polarised society where even the mention of talking about climate change or climate action brands you as a member of a certain tribe. And we know that we can't get to the action that we need within the limited time we have with that polarisation. So what I'm thinking about is how do we at MOD make sure that we get the widest number of people possible to come in and see the science and see the research and be inspired? How do we do that? So we do that in a couple of ways. The first way is through our exhibition experiences. We've just opened, as of Friday actually, our newest exhibition. So each exhibition takes over 6 gallery spaces and we change the exhibition every 6 months. So looking at hedonism, and in hedonism we've asked the question, how could you think about pleasure for a lifetime and not just a weekend? And one of those exhibits, we've been very privileged to work with US-based artist Annie Liu, who does a lot of work around biotechnology, and this work is called Biophilic Fantasies, where you wander into our gallery, which has full windows open to the street where people pass by, so you've got a lot of porosity coming in, and it's filled with the most amazing plants that you could imagine, except half of them are fake. And the wind that you feel rushing through your legs is from electric fans whirring on the bottom floor. And there is lighting that really attracts you through, but then you realise it's purple, which isn't often a colour seen in nature. Our visitors are responding really weirdly to it. Some of them adore it. And when I mentioned some of the work, like VR work there's some studies done that if you do a VR exploration of the Great Barrier Reef, or you scuba dive on the Great Barrier Reef, you have almost exactly the same desire to save it afterwards. And so there's this really interesting thing around how does that fakery, if you like, actually affect our willingness to protect nature. So that's what we're playing with in hedonism, and we're also looking at then the health benefits of nature to have that conversation about how we protect our natural spaces. We're about to adapt an exhibition called 7 Siblings from the Future from the Heureka Science Centre in Helsinki. In Helsinki, the exhibition was located in this fictional place called Jukala. We've relocated it in our best Australian accent to Jukalara, mate. And what we need to do when you walk in is actually see what that environment will look like in 2050. And we know that Adelaide in 2050 will look like bushfires, it will be dry, it will be hot. We're looking at how do we increase the air conditioning, the heating in the space, how do we make it feel, lower the air conditioning, how do we make it feel like a place of the future so people can touch it, taste it, understand what that 3 degrees feels like, knowing that it might not feel like much, and then accepting that that doesn't mean that there aren't radical changes that happen with. So putting people into this 2050 space to have the discussion. And the one that I wanted to spend a couple more minutes on is Ecologies Anarchies, which is the one that we're planning for next year. And so this has a number of aspects to it. We're interested in complex systems, dynamic, interconnected systems, because we think some of the difficulty we have in understanding action on climate is because which bit do you choose? How do you make decisions about what you do when everything seems so interconnected and difficult? But partly because we'd like to propose a new model. And so the Anarchies is really looking for networked anti-hierarchical systems or disobeying some of the rules of the system that we currently have in order to create a new paradigm. That's not easy and it's not taught well in high schools. So that's something we really want to be able to bring through, a capability for systems thinking, because we think it's a critical skill for the future. So Ecologies and Anarchies will include exhibits on Industry 4.0, automation, artificial intelligence, customisation, 3D printing. It will include exhibits on cancer biology and how cancer comes as a complex system. It will include exhibits on climate change and action. And we're particularly interested in exhibits that help young people think through some of the citizen science aspects they can do. So not just climate action, but actually contributing to a body of research. And really at the end of the exhibition, we want people to go away with a really good understanding of what systems thinking is, a really good understanding about why it's frustrating that we're not getting any action, but also some tips and things for things that they can do themselves, which might be different to the sorts of things they've seen before. So it's not just about, reducing their footprint or doing those things that we must do, but also some of these other ways to contribute to shifting or changing the system that we're in. I'm not quite sure how we're going to do it yet. I think it's going to be challenging, but we're in the early stages of exploring it, and I'll talk a little bit about that at the workshop tomorrow as well. There's also aspects of museum practice. We would thoroughly admit that we are not very good at it yet, but we are trying. If you want to speak to Rosie McKee on my team, she can tell you about our 5 different waste disposal boxes that we have in the office as an example of trying to do that, but also trying to get people to obey those rules is a challenge in itself. We have a set of 7 design principles that we worked through in the development of MOD, and one of those was to be scalable. And this was a mixed match of things about being good for one person or for many, being good for one exhibit or the long term. And our audience said that wasn't good enough. They wanted to see sustainability as an explicit design objective. So some of the things that we have got as examples of doing that is buying these sorts of things, which we will use in exhibit again and again and again. These are sound chairs where you can sit in. They're great for VR. They're great for listening to sound works. And we've been using those in every exhibit rather than recrafting something each time. And then we build things for reuse. So this is a tunnel that you could walk through and pretend to be a bee in a research lab. That tunnel's been designed so it can be taken apart, used in modules, re-hung as screens. One of the pieces of negative feedback we got from our visitors at MOD was it's just furniture and screens. And I thought it is, actually. A lot of it is, because we can reuse and repurpose all of that stuff, thereby minimising our environmental impact. So I think for us, the critical thing is designing experiences that don't put people off, that draw in the widest number of visitors, that help them understand the complexity of climate and give them something very, very practical to work on from that stage. Thank you.